Today we're smoking a pork butt. We used our 50-gallon drum Hunsaker smoker today. Shout out to Chris Crosby, who taught Kevin how to smoke, who in turn taught me as I helped him. First, you're going to get your charcoal ready. Fill your chimney with charcoal, but on the bottom put a fire starter. It makes lighting it a lot easier. Once you get that started, you're going to start adding stuff to the drum. You're going to add the charcoal, some wood, and then once your charcoal starts to get white on top, add that to the drum as well. And now we're going to prep the pork. Kevin was actually here with me this weekend, so he was able to help prep, but you can do it by yourself. I've probably done it by myself more often than I've had help doing it. First, you're going to wipe it off, get all the excess blood and liquids off of it before you start adding other things to it. Make sure it's all good and clean. And then if you're prepping just a few hours before you smoke it, you're going to need to add mustard to it. But if you prep the night before, you don't need to add mustard. It just helps bind the seasonings to the pork. Now the first thing we're going to add after we cover the whole thing with a good layer of mustard is you're going to go in with some salt, pepper, and garlic seasoning. Make sure and cover the entire thing with a good layer of that before you add your rub. The rub we used this time was a cherry cola flavored rub. It's become our favorite flavor since we discovered it a while ago, and we use that for almost everything. But you can use whatever rub you want, depends on if you're going for a sweet flavor or a savory flavor. So just use whatever you like. And get a nice good layer on there. Kind of pat it into the meat to make sure that it stays on. Get a good flavor in your meat. Once you get all the seasonings on your pork, you're just going to let it sit for a while to get all the flavors in there before you put it on the smoker. Now, once your smoker gets to about 250 degrees, you're going to add your pork. You want to put the fat cap down first. Get that in there first with the fat cap down. You're going to let that smoke like that for about 3 hours or until the internal temperature of the pork starts to stall out. And now we're going to prep to wrap it. We like to use some butter, about half a stick depending on the size of the pork butt. We just slice that up into pats. And then on top of that, we add some brown sugar. We don't measure anything. We did at one point, but we just put it on whatever looks good. So after the brown sugar, then we add some honey. And once you get that ready, you just wait for your pork butt to be done. And once your pork butt starts to stall out in temperature, you pull it out of the smoker, and then you'll put it on top of the foil. And then on top of the pork butt, we add more butter, more brown sugar, and more honey. Once you get all of those added to the top of the pork butt, you're going to wrap it nice and tight in the foil. This time, when you put the pork butt back in the smoker, you're going to want the fat cap up because you want all of the juices from the fat to drain into the meat. So you want to make sure to wrap it to where the juices are not going to come out of the foil. So once you get that wrapped all nice and snug, you're going to put it back in the smoker. Or you could even put it in your oven to finish up if you wanted to do that, since you're not getting any more smoke on the meat. But you're going to cook the pork until it gets to an internal temperature of at least 205 degrees, because that'll render the fat and make it just juicy and pull apart pork. Once your pork gets to an internal temperature of around 205 degrees, you're going to take it out of the smoker and let it rest for at least an hour. We usually put it in the microwave or an empty oven just to keep it warm. And now the fun part, you get to shred the pork. Look how beautifully that bone comes out of there with no meat left on it. Now the meat is going to be very hot, so we strongly recommend using some heat-resistant gloves or you're going to burn your hands. And we prefer using our hands to shred up the pork. It just seems to be easier and just works a little bit better. And as you can see with how juicy the meat is, it just falls right apart while we're pulling it. So get that all shredded. Make sure to mix in all the juices with it too. If you like the fat, mix that in too. I like the fat. It's one of my favorite parts when it's nice and tender. It's just so good. It has so much flavor to it. And there are so many different ways you can use your pork. This time we just made pork sandwiches with some smoked macaroni and cheese, and it was delicious.